Hi y'all, it's Flaca Calaca here, and I'm going to be helping y'all out with a lovely little skill today, getting low and avoiding falling. Um, my skater name, of course, is Flaca Calaca. I started skating in 2017, so it's been a couple of years. Um, I started skating flat track for about a year before I moved to Austin and happened to get into bank track skating with TXRD. I missed the first tryout by accident by a couple of days, and so I wound up skating rec league for a really long time before I jumped into the newbies program and eventually I found my way in. My home team, of course, is the TXRD Holy Rollers. Today I'm sporting my Gender Rollers Derby jersey. It's a trans roller derby team, sort of a collective spread across the U.S. So I thought it would be fun. It's not like I've gotten to wear derby stuff a whole lot lately, like many of us. So the skill we're going to look at is getting low. And so I'll talk a little bit here where maybe you can hear me, and of course go through this again outside on skates. A couple of things are, one, getting low in derby stance prevents us from falling. Of course, once you're lower to the ground, you're lowering your center of gravity, so when you take hits, your sort of pivot point is a little bit lower to the ground. And so that prevents you from being knocked over quite so easily in blocks or other things. Especially when we're new as well, we sometimes have a tendency to stand up when we feel like we're falling, and that is going to have the potential of flipping us onto our butts, and as I'm sure I have done and many of us have done before. So building that habit to, when we're feeling unstable, get lower, just whether that's having to do with getting hit or not, and of course when we do take hits, getting ourselves and keeping ourselves low. So I'm going to strap on my skates and we'll start doing a little filming outside. So in this first one, what we're going to talk about is the sort of posture that comes with getting low, and how that's different from when we stand straight. So I'm going to get a couple of shots of me doing each of those, and then we'll kind of talk about how they're different. You might also be wondering, Flaca, what are you doing with your arms? One, I'm really awkward and I don't always know what to do with my arms. Whenever I'm practicing a skill or drill like this, I like to put them up, kind of like you're seeing in this like weird, like, what are those kind of position. But basically all I'm doing is thinking about keeping my body in line. So I'm thinking about these imaginary parallels running down from my shoulders, to my hips and to my knees and lower. And I'm thinking about my shoulders, my hands kind of being in those parallels, right? And so that helps me kind of visualize like what I'm doing with my hips and keeping myself kind of on that bar. Now you saw when I was going through that, again, I'm showing kind of myself skating high, self-skating into that lower position. Another thing is that if you'll notice whenever you are getting low, if I'm standing up straight, I'm at full extension. If I wanted to hop, if I wanted to push, if I wanted to go somewhere else, the first thing I'm going to need to do is to bend my knees, right? So let's say I want to scooch myself to the right. Say I want to go to the left, to the right, to the left. Because when I'm full extension, the first thing I have to do is I have to bend my knees. If I'm already down in derby stance, I'm ready to go. I'm already bent, I'm already coiled, I'm already prepared, and I am ready to react how I need to react, right? If someone comes in and I'm standing straight up like this and they come in for a hit and I think, oh, I want to counter hit you. Well, now I have to get myself into a position to where I could do that, getting low, and then I could hit them, right? I want to be there. So when I'm low and in derby stance, right, this sort of passive derby stance, or I'm just prepared to react to something, right? If I'm down here, I'm ready to go. My legs are coiled. I could scooch. I could hit. I could do all sorts of things. And that's part of why that's handy. Now going through this, I'm kind of realizing that I've been talking a lot about these like vertical lines that I'm trying to maintain with both my legs. Like a lot of things, that's a commonality, but not necessarily a rule. So if I am buddying up with somebody, for example, in a pack or as a buddy in a wall, whatever, that can of course be adjusted. So let's imagine that this wall here is my buddy, right? Now, if I was trying to get low with my buddy, if you'll notice a lot of times when I'm getting low, my stance, my feet widen a little bit. And I'm kind of doing that equally on either side. I'm doing that because I'm by myself right now. And kind of imagine like, you know, if I was a lone blocker in that moment. Oftentimes that's not the case. So we can of course adjust that, right? So if I was here needing to get with my buddy, I can of course adjust that. And maybe I pick a parallel, right? So this shoulder to this hip to this knee and this foot are going to be kind of my parallel that I'm going to stick with, and this other one is a little bit cheated out, right? And so that's kind of where I'm adjusting, getting low to be able to meet the need to get with my buddy. Imagine there's somebody kind of on this side, right? So this is my parallel that I'm picking, and then I'm getting with my buddy, right? So maybe I've got my side up against them, I've got my other foot out to kind of keep this corral together. But when I'm getting low, I still have a parallel. I'm just picking one in this instance. You could do the same thing on the other side, right? I've got my foot, I've got my knee, I've got my hip, I've got my shoulder. I'm getting here with my buddy because I picked this parallel. I'll scooch over a little bit for you. My other foot is kind of out for support because this is the parallel that I picked this time. And when I do that, again, my center of gravity, my hips are still getting lower to the ground than I was before. My head is also getting lower to the ground, but I'm still relatively balanced up top. So sometimes when we do this, we'll see folks getting together and instead of their whole body getting lower like this, we'll maybe see one of these, right? And you can imagine maybe my buddy's over here, but I'm poked way over. My shoulders are kind of in a different spot. My shoulders are kind of still over my knees and kind of still over my feet, but my hips are way the heck out of line right now. And so putting myself out of that parallel line is going to make it harder for me to keep my balance. So when someone is pushing on me, I'm making it harder on myself. So that's something to watch out for, right? So if you got to think of one thing, one constant is thinking about picking at least one parallel. If you're by yourself, try to do both. But if you need one, just at least pick one good parallel and try to keep that when you're getting low. Something I'll also point out when we're getting low, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but in getting that center of gravity lower, I'm really flipping tall. With no skates, I am 6 feet tall, and it makes it tough for me to keep people from getting under my center of gravity. So when you hit something, right, let's imagine my arm, just my forearm here. If I hit this thing, and there's a little pivot point right here, let's say this is pinned on a little wheel, right? If I hit it up here, it's going to spin this way, right? It's going to spin around that center of gravity. If I hit it down here, it's going to go around that center of gravity, right? It's going to pivot around that point. If I hit it right in that center of gravity, I'm going to have to push the whole object. This is a similar thing here. Derby skaters are a little bit different because we're not pinned on a little wheel, right? We're using our legs and our core and our muscles to keep ourselves steady. So when we're doing this stuff, we, we're doing some active work to keep ourselves up and steady. When we're lowering our center of gravity like that, we're kind of lowering a vulnerable point. Now, everybody's body is going to be a little bit different, but I know for me, a point where I'm vulnerable is underneath my center of gravity, right? I don't weigh a whole lot. I'm 6 foot. I'm like 148, 150 pounds. I'll get flipped like a little pancake if somebody really gets under me and gets a good angle, right? And so that's something I try to be wary of by skating really low, and keeping my center of gravity, keeping my vulnerable spot, you know, kind of low to the ground, and keeping them from getting that good angle up on me. Another point about this, and you know, you can this kind of starts to get into like executing blocking and the like. But when we execute a good block, sometimes there's this sort of upward pushing motion, right? So let's imagine I'm going to go and hit someone, right? And this is still more about the getting low than the hitting, but let's imagine, right, someone is going to hit me and I'm going to demonstrate that. So someone's going to hit me, right? So they come in low, they choose this leg as their leg to stabilize and aim with. This is going to be the leg they're pushing with. They're going to push up, right, this hip, because see it's upward pushing motion, right? Now I know when I would do this, if I was trying to be the most effective that I could, I'm going to take this upward hitting motion and try and scoop under that person's center of gravity, right? So if I can come right under them, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard to deal with. So when we're getting that, forcing them to hit that center of gravity or hit above that center of gravity so you can still keep your legs down on the ground and keep them stabilizing you, it's going to be really helpful a lot of the time. Although I'm sure there are exceptions in other situations. I am but one humble human, but I hope that you can take the things that I'm talking about here to heart and maybe put them in your toolkit, and I hope that they serve you well. Yeah, so I think that's all I got for you. And thanks, I love you, and bye.